You are a guardian angel and designer. What the f is you talking about, man? You are not from Harlem. Why do you keep thinking that you are from Harlem, bro? You are not from Harlem. I did not grow up with you, man.
I was the CEO of Diplomats. I made Diplomats with him. I was with him for every bit of his journey. I held him down. I took that position of holding him down.
You was a fan. You begged us. You are a fan, nigga. A fan. So you can sit around and act like you've been around all this Harlem and everything. You ever see somebody from Harlem try to act like they from Harlem so bad that you got to keep saying, I'm from Harlem? From Harlem, know who's from Harlem. You don't have to keep saying you from Harlem.
What if everything you thought you knew about Jim Jones was a carefully constructed illusion? A script written by the man himself to rewrite history and steal the shine from the very people who created the legacy he now clings to. What if the so-called CEO of the Diplomats wasn't a founding father at all, but a die-hard fan who weaseled his way into the spotlight? Because that's exactly what Camron just laid bare. He didn't come with petty shade, he came with surgical precision, dismantling every layer of fiction Jim built around himself over the last 2 decades. It started not with a diss, but with a correction, a reset of the record. Cam wasn't out to get even, he was out to tell the truth. And the truth is, Jim Jones didn't create Dipset. He didn't discover Camron or Madala E, and he damn sure wasn't running the operation. He was a fan, just a fan, who begged to be part of the movement after hearing the legendary Children of the Corn freestyles. That's right, according to Cam, Jim came to him on the block after hearing the streets buzz over those bars. He wasn't in the studio. He wasn't in the ciphers, was on the outside looking in, desperate to be let in the door. And when Cam said, "You were a fan," those 4 words shattered everything. All the fabricated narratives, the decades of interviews where Jim sold himself as the co-architect of a dynasty gone in an instant. Because real ones don't have to keep reminding people where they're from. You don't see legends screaming, "I'm from Harlem," every chance they get. Harlem knows its own. Jim's constant need to repeat it only proves what's always been true. He was never really part of it. Not like that. But this story isn't just about bruised egos or friendly competition gone sour. This is about stolen legacies, clout chasing at the highest level, and what happens when someone builds their identity on borrowed history. Jim Jones didn't earn his way into Dipset. He maneuvered, he begged, he latched on when the movement was already catching fire. And now, as the walls of fiction close in, he's scrambling to rewrite the past before the architects come and tear it all down. The problem is, they already have. See, Camron isn't alone in telling the story. Madallery backed it up. So did Joel Santana. Even Choke No Joke, a man who doesn't exactly ride with Cam, admitted that Jim wasn't the brains of the operation. He had a role, the muscle, the enforcer, the presence. But he wasn't at the top. He wasn't the visionary. That was Cam. Always has been, always will be. But
yeah, listen, man. Listen. You were fanned out and you begged us to come to your house after you heard all these mixtapes. That's how you got in. Mase actually taught you how to rap. Literally. He taught you how to rap.
Mase taught me how to rap.
You say it. We taught you how to rap. How you ran the whole organization. How you made Diplomat. Yeah, you ain't make none of this stuff. You was a fan. That's how you got down originally. Period. I heard the new shit you did. Yo, you want to come through? Come through. Why? Why are we going to Jomo's house? So, yeah, I would bring some bitches over there to sometime. A little crack, maybe.
But Jim, somewhere along the way, stopped playing his part and started rewriting the whole script. He started inserting himself into moments he was never part of, claiming credit for projects he didn't build, and painting himself as the mastermind when he was really just following the blueprint. This isn't speculation. This is confession. Straight from Jim's own mouth. There's footage audio where Jim literally admits that Madallery taught him how to rap, not the other way around. Let that sink in. The same man who claims to be the CEO, the boss, the backbone, is on record saying he had to be taught how to spit. That's not a leader. That's a student. And when the student tries to claim the throne, that's when the streets step in to remind him who built the empire in the first place. And it's not just about music. It's about codes, street codes. You don't claim blocks you've never stood on. You don't remix your come-up story depending on who's in the room. You keep it solid. But Jim? He's been switching up for years, saying one thing in one interview and the opposite in another. Telling people he housed Cam, fed him, clothed him, when the receipts say otherwise. And the worst part? He's got no real defense. When pressed, when asked to show proof, he folds. He pivots to insults, threats, body shaming, anything but the truth. That's what happens when the lie runs out of runway. You crash, and Jim is crashing hard. Even Cam doesn't sound mad anymore. He sounds cold, dismissive, like a man who's done arguing with clowns. When he speaks on Jim now, it's with surgical distance. He's not throwing shade, he's shining a light. And when he says that artists who align with Jim don't level up, they fall off, it's not a diss, it's a data point, a pattern, a truth. And it doesn't stop there. Aim's desperation has reached new lows. He's on a press run now, bouncing from platform to platform, dragging up old beef just to stay relevant. Meanwhile, he accuses Cam and Ma$E of clout chasing. The irony writes itself. The man crying clout is the one writing every podcast, every magazine, every vlog, just to keep his name in the mix. When that doesn't work, he gets ugly, starts threatening to expose secrets, hinting at dirt, trying to bait the very men who made him into firing back. But they don't, because when you've already been exposed, the only person still playing the game is you. Camron, Ma$E, and even Juelz, they've moved on. They're building, thriving, doing real work. Jim, he's stuck in the past, hoping nostalgia will cover up the cracks in his story. But the internet doesn't forget. The streets don't forgive. And the people who were actually there, they're all speaking now.
Nice.
This is bigger than one beef. This is about the core of hip-hop, authenticity, respect, and legacy. And Jim Jones just lost all three. The final blow is the silence. Not from the audience, but from Jim himself. When the cameras stop, when the interviews fade, all that's left is the truth. And the truth is he never built it. He just borrowed it. Now the rent is due. And if you thought the storm was over, you were wrong, because now the aftermath begins. Jim Jones, the man once shouting from rooftops that he was the foundation of Dipset, is standing in the rubble of his own legend. And this time, there's no rebuilding. See, when the smoke clears and every lie has been stripped away, what's left is not a king, not a CEO, not a general, but a man exposed by the very voices that once gave him credibility. Camron, Mase, Juelz Santana. They didn't just remove the mask, they held up the mirror. And what the world saw in that reflection wasn't Harlem royalty. He was a hustler of narratives, a man so hungry for spotlight that he blurred the line between contribution and creation. But this ain't just about Jim lying to the public. This is about how he lied to himself, repeated the story so many times that he started believing it, started breathing it, living it. And the moment that identity got challenged, he lashed out with the desperation of a man who knows he's got nothing left but pride. It's that desperation that led him to throw threats in place of facts, to body shame Ma$E, to gaslight Camron, to act like a wounded king instead of owning his role as a glorified passenger on the Dipset train. That ain't leadership. That's insecurity dressed in bravado. And now that the real architects of the movement have spoken, Jim's mic is off. Every time he tries to push the narrative, another voice from the past steps forward with receipts. And not just the big names. No, it's people who were in the rooms Jim said he ran. People who watched him fade into the background while Cam and Ma$E laid the groundwork. It's not hate, it's history, no matter how many interviews he does. Jim can't remix the facts, can't rebrand himself now that the truth is viral. You know what's wild? Even Freaky Zeke, a man who's always played neutral, finally admitted that all this tension didn't even start off that deep, that it was outsiders, egos, whispers, media bait that turned a few bruised feelings into a full-blown war. But it's Jim who kept it going. He fed it, used it, weaponized nostalgia to stay relevant. And when that wasn't enough, went on a press tour playing victim while still throwing shots. You ever seen a man throw a rock and cry when the glass cuts him? That's what this has become. The streets know the difference between real tension and promo beef. And Jim's out here performing pain like it's part of his brand, but there's one thing you can't fake: respect, and his. It's bankrupt. The Dipset legacy is carved into hip-hop history, but Jim Jones has been trying to chisel his name deeper than it ever truly belonged. That's why his stories keep changing. That's why the timelines don't line up, because the truth requires consistency, and all Jim has are contradictions. Let's talk about what happened when the spotlight started dimming. When Jim couldn't stand being in Camron's shadow any longer, he made a move that broke the #1 code in street culture: loyalty during war. While Dipset was beefing with their rivals, Jim did the unthinkable. He stepped on stage. With the opposition, that wasn't a chess move. That was a betrayal, not a strategic one, an emotional one. The kind that comes from envy, not vision. That was the moment the brotherhood died. Because in the game, you don't align with your enemies just to get a little more shine. You fight your battles side by side, or you step away in silence. But Jim wanted the stage, wanted the camera. He wanted the crowd to scream his name. And to get that, he sold out everything that made Dipset untouchable. Even Joel Santana, who's been trying to keep the peace, couldn't spin that move. It was raw betrayal. And Jim called it business. Let's be real, the only business that got handled that day was the final sale of his credibility. Now let's zoom out. This ain't just about Harlem. This ain't just about hip-hop. This is about how fame, when built on fiction, always collapses. And when it does, it takes the man with it. Jim Jones has become the blueprint for what happens when you chase legacy instead of living it. He's clinging to moments from 2003, hoping the crowd will forget that the people who actually built the movement don't even mention his name unless they're correcting the record. You know what happens when someone's truly confident in what they've built? They don't defend it. They don't fight for credit. They just stand on it. But Jim's out here doing interviews with Cam Capone, XXL, every platform that'll listen. Not to celebrate Dipset, but to rewrite his own script before the curtain drops for good. It's not just sad, it's embarrassing. And even the fans see through it now. The comments don't lie. They remember who was really running the streets, who was dropping the classics, who had the vision. And it wasn't Jim, it was the ones he's now throwing dirt on. Camron didn't even need to raise his voice. All he had to do was speak plainly. When your enemy's drowning in lies, all you need to do is hand them a mirror. And that's exactly what he did. But maybe the darkest part of this whole unraveling is that Jim still doesn't see the damage. He thinks if he keeps talking, keeps spinning, keeps deflecting, the truth won't catch up. But it already has. The streets don't care about your PR run. They care about legacy. And right now, Jim's legacy is in free fall. He had a role, no one's denying that. But the role he's now claiming, that's fantasy. That's revisionist history. And the real ones, the Cams, the Mase, the Juleses, they're done letting him tell it unchecked. Is what happens when you cross every code and then cry foul when the truth pulls up. You don't get to ride the wave and then try to rewrite where the current came from. Jim Jones wasn't the wave. He was a ripple. A loud one, sure. But ripples fade. And this time, the tide has turned for good. You want to talk receipts? They're endless old interviews. Studio footage, freestyles where Jim was nowhere to be, found audio clips where he admits he was taught, not teaching, even his own contradictions, stacking up like dominoes. And now, all those dominoes are falling, one after the other. And what's left behind isn't a king, isn't a boss. It's a cautionary tale. The streets remember. Teeth fans remember. The culture remembers. And when the real story gets told, Jim Jones won't be the author. He'll be the footnote. So if you've made it this far, you already know this wasn't just beef. This was a reckoning, a dismantling. A final warning to anyone trying to build a name off someone else's grind. Because eventually, the builders always come back to reclaim what's theirs. And this time,